You've seen them in old photos and films, right? Those German officers from the World War era with brutal-looking scars carved into their cheeks. It's easy to think, wow, must have been a nasty fight on the battlefield. But what if I told you most of those weren't from battle at all? You see, in the German Empire, a facial scar wasn't a disfigurement, it was a status symbol of the absolute elite. These so-called bragging scars were the ultimate mark of honor, courage, and high society. This is the wild story of how young men, destined to become Germany's top military officers, willingly put their faces in the path of a sharpened blade, all in the name of prestige. First things first, let's define what we're actually looking at. That signature scar is called a Schmiss in German, which literally translates to smite or hit. It was also known as a Renommier-Schmiss, a bragging scar, and that's exactly what these men did. They bragged about them. In German and Austrian society from the 19th through the early 20th century, a nasty facial scar told the world you were educated, brave, and part of a very exclusive club. Believe it or not, for a woman seeking a partner, a man with a Schmiss was considered good husband material because the scar was physical proof of his character and social standing. The Iron Chancellor himself, Otto von Bismarck, who unified Germany, famously said a man's courage could be judged by the number of scars on their cheeks. This is the origin of that classic movie villain, the sinister German officer with a menacing scar. But the reality wasn't about being evil, it was about belonging to an elite class that valued guts and stoicism above all else. To understand how they got these scars, we have to enter the strange world of academic fencing. These scars were earned in a highly ritualized sword fight called Mensur, or academic fencing. This wasn't a sport you could just sign up for. It was exclusive to Studentenverbindungen, elite, all-male student fraternities at the most prestigious German and Austrian universities. Think of them as traditional, lifelong brotherhoods with rigid codes of honor. Now, this was nothing like the fencing you see in the Olympics. The name Mensur comes from the Latin word for dimension, because the fighters, known as Paukanten, stood at a fixed distance from each other. They were rooted to the spot. Moving your feet or dodging was strictly forbidden and seen as cowardice. The goal wasn't to score points, it was to stand your ground and take the hits without flinching. The weapon was a specialized saber called a Menserschläger, designed not to stab, but to slash and leave clean cuts. The fighters wore a ton of protective gear, padded leather, chainmail, and steel goggles with a nose guard, but with one very intentional exception. Their cheeks and forehead were left completely exposed. The whole point was to get a facial scar while minimizing the risk of a fatal injury. A doctor was always on hand to stitch up the wounds, making sure they would heal into a nice visible scar. So, why on earth would anyone sign up for this? The Mensur wasn't really a duel to settle a score, nor was it a sport. It was a test of character. The whole ritual was designed to prove you had discipline, self-control, and most importantly, the ability to face pain and danger without showing fear. Standing perfectly still while a sharp blade swings at your face was the ultimate proof of your inner strength. The Schmiss was the permanent physical evidence that you had passed this test. It was a resume etched into your skin, signaling to everyone that you had the courage of the ruling class. This desire for a scar became so intense that some students would barely defend themselves, hoping to get a good cut. In a bizarre twist of vanity, some were even rumored to aggravate their wounds by rubbing in horsehair or pulling at the stitches to make the scar more pronounced. There were even stories of men who, lacking the guts for a real Mensur, would pay a doctor to slice their face with a scalpel to fake it. A smooth, unscarred face. That was like a resume with no experience. The tradition's roots go way back to the 16th and 17th centuries, when university students, often nobles, were allowed to carry swords for self-defense. Of course, this led to a lot of brawls and lethal duels. Over time, universities tried to regulate the violence, which led to the development of the less deadly slashing duel. The practice hit its peak during the German Empire in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Back then, university was a privilege for the upper crust, so these fraternities were filled with the sons of aristocrats and high-ranking officials. The Schmiss became an unmistakable sign of this social and academic elite. The military connection was direct. Many of these students went on to become officers, and they carried the values and the scars of their fraternity days right into the army. The scar essentially became an informal part of the uniform, a shorthand that said, "I'm part of the educated ruling and military class." One of the most famous examples is Otto Skorzeny, a notorious SS officer in World War II, once dubbed the most dangerous man in Europe. That dramatic scar on his left cheek wasn't from a battlefield. He got it in one of the 15 Mensur duels he fought as a student in Vienna. For Skorzeny and countless others, that scar was a proud badge of their background, earned long before they ever saw a real war. For centuries, the Mensur thrived, but its connection to the old aristocratic elite eventually became its liability. When the Nazis came to power, they had a complicated relationship with the practice. While many high-ranking Nazis like Skorzeny wore their dueling scars with pride, Hitler distrusted the student corporation's independence and elitism. He saw them as holdovers of the old guard and a threat to absolute loyalty to the state. In 1933, the Nazi regime banned the Studentenverbindungen and the Mensur along with them. But the tradition didn't die, it just went underground, with secret duels fought throughout the war. After World War II, the scar's meaning was turned on its head. The horrors of the war had completely reshaped the world's perception of German militarism. The Schmiss, once a symbol of honor, became inextricably linked to the image of the ruthless Nazi officer. For the outside world, it morphed from a badge of honor into a mark of a villain. The Allies continued the ban on Mensur after the war, and although the practice re-emerged in the 1950s, it never regained its former prestige. Today, it still exists in a few conservative fraternities, but a fresh Schmiss on campus is incredibly rare. So, the scarred faces of those German generals tell a story, but not one of battle. They're relics of a deeply ingrained cultural ritual where courage was tested by standing still and honor was measured in the slice of a blade. It's a powerful reminder of how the meaning of symbols can completely flip. What was once the mark of an ideal man, a perfect husband, and a brave soldier became, through the dark lens of history, the very face of a villain. If you found this piece of hidden history fascinating, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. And let me know in the comments, what other historical symbols can you think of that have completely changed their meaning over time? Thanks for watching.